Greetings, gentle viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Here I am outside the Middle Temple in London, this Inn of Court. You see above the gateway there, that symbol of the Lamb of God on the white background with a red cross. So we're going to go in now. So I'll explain why they have that symbol. So this is an Inn of Court. This is for barrister. A barrister is a type of lawyer. So in England and Wales, you can't be a lawyer as such. You're either a barrister or you're a solicitor. And most Commonwealth countries got a divided legal profession like that. So going back to the curious name of this place, tells you a bit about the history of it. So go back to the Crusades, starting in 1095 when Pope Urban preached the first crusade at Clermont-Ferrand. Don't want to go too much into that, but various orders of knights were set up, like the Knights Templar, sworn to liberate the temple in Jerusalem, the remains of the temple of Solomon, for Christianity, to allow Christians to go on pilgrimage to the Holy Land again. So they peaked at about 20,000 members, the Knights Templar, but only about 10% of them were ever actual knights. The others were squires or pages or helping out in some other capacity. But anyway, they gathered here in London. They had an inn to stay at before setting off on crusade. Obviously, there were lots of crusades, about 14 crusades if memory serves. Anyway, so they were actually banned in 1218, if I got that right. And this was given to another similar order, the Knights Hospitaller, who took it over. But anyway, so it was the inner temple, the middle temple, the outer temple. The outer temple no longer exists. So we're in Middle Temple, Inner Temple still exists, which is also an Inn of Court. So every barrister in England and Wales must belong to an Inn of Court. There are 4 Inns of Court: Middle Temple, Inner Temple, Lincoln's Inn, and Gray's Inn. And it's not that one of them is better than the other, or they don't specialise in different areas of law. You could be a family barrister, and in any of the 4 inns, you could be, my goodness, an insolvency barrister, belong to any of the 4 inns. They don't specialise. It's more or less at random which one you join, and then there's a great difference in character between them. But anyway, so then the Pope, he forbade clergy from practicing in the King's courts, because in the 13th century, if I got that right, because until that time the sacerdotal vocation had been considered to be entirely compatible with practicing another profession. You could be a priest who also practiced medicine or architecture or accountancy or anything like that. But anyway, the Pope said clergy could only practice canon law, as in that's the law of the Catholic Church. So that was that. So therefore, laity, a layman like myself, not a priest or a monk, only they could practice in the King's courts. So that changed things. Anyway, so therefore some laymen started to practice law, because until that time virtually every erudite man was a priest or a monk, because the Catholic Church, this being a Catholic country at the time, controlled all higher education. And obviously all the legal cases were in Latin. So then the king said you couldn't study, well, what would I say, non-ecclesiastical law in the City of London. And so here we are just to the west of the City of London, because the City of London was everywhere within about a mile of St Paul's Cathedral, or just beyond that. So when they finally took over these places from the Knights Hospitaller, various Inns of Court used to exist, like Tavies Inn, which no longer exists. So the Middle Temple has been here in some time since really the reign of King James I as an Inn of Court for barristers. They often called them sergeants of the law, sergeant with a J in the middle, oddly. Henry VIII had seized it from that order, the Knights Hospitaller. Long after the last crusade, that organisation, the Knights Hospitaller, still existed. Well, he closed it down, part of his dissolution of the monasteries. And then King James I, he gave it to this Honourable Society of Middle Temple for a peppercorn rent of £10 per annum. I know a pound was worth more in the early 17th century than it is today, but that was still yours for a song. Anyway, so they've been here ever since, and here is their church, Temple Church. Each of the 4 Inns of Courts has a church. You don't have to practice at all, and in the old days, you obviously, that was an essential part of it. Only those of the established church could practice law. Obviously only Catholics long ago, then only Anglicans, then other Protestants were admitted to the bar, then Roman Catholics, we were allowed in from about the 1790s, Jews from about the 1850s, and then all faiths from the 1870s. But it's there, it's completely optional if you want to go. This year is significant. It's a century since women have been able to be called to the bar. Here you see a photo of these lady barristers. So in 1919, the Sex Disqualification Act was passed, and that said that gender was no longer a reason to disbar someone from practicing any profession. So 1919, the first women were called to the bar. As soon as you qualify as a barrister, that's called being called to the bar. And the people who called that day, they're called callees. Bit confusing. They're known as callees, I should say. So that's that. What else can I say? So Middle Temple is right beside Inner Temple, which is there through that archway, and this whole building is Inner Temple. So blink and you'll miss the distinction. What a pleasing cobblestone street it is. They're hard by each other. There's Fleet Street out that way, not Fleet as in a group of ships, but Fleet, the river, one of the lost rivers of London. It's built over, it's a tributary of the Thames, and to the north of that, to the north of Fleet Street, you'll find Lincoln's Inn, and north of that one, you'll find Gray's Inn. So those are the 4 Inns of Court. So every barrister in England or Wales must belong to one of these 4 Inns of Courts. In London, even if he's actually practicing in Swansea or Carlisle or somewhere, and every every Inn of Court is subdivided into chambers. So there are hundreds of chambers in England and Wales. Most of them are here in London, but there are some in other major cities in Wales and England. So even if your chambers is actually in Manchester or Nottingham or something, you are still a member of an Inn of Court here. So chambers like an office, and the barristers share it. Just occasionally, you'll have chambers which has got only one barrister in it. I know there was one of those on the High Street at Oxford, but usually they have 30 or 40, something like that. So they share secretaries who are known as clerks. One of them's the head clerk. What else? They just pay for the building together, and that's that. So the way you have to pay to be a member of a chambers, you're not allowed to practice without being a member of a chambers. Anything else about being a member of a chambers? You are a member of this for life, so long as you pay your fees, don't disgrace yourself. And you can be kicked out of the profession if you do something illegal or really unethical, so that's that. But so not all of them bother to keep practicing. So you'll see, like, here's a chambers. This has got loads. Do you see the list of all of them? And they're just, if you're a man, you're known as Mr., unless you have another professional title, such as Professor or Doctor. If you're a woman, you're known as Miss, again, unless you're otherwise Professor or Doctor. Now, what if she's Miss Smith, that she marries Mr. Robertson? Does she become known as Mrs. Robertson? No. It was a long-established convention that a barrister, if she starts practicing under her maiden name, she always keeps her maiden name. A famous example would be Tony Blair's wife, Cherie Booth, who, when she was called to the bar, she's called as Miss Booth. Even though she's Mrs. Blair, she always practices as Miss Booth, so they keep it like that. Now, some of them have after their name the letters QC, which is Queen's Counsel. So superb barristers, after I think it's at least 10 years call, can get to call themselves QC. Everyone else is a junior barrister. Now, the majority of barristers are junior barristers till the day they retire. But if you're superb, you get to be a Queen's Counsel. Anyway, so this Inn of Court, like all the others, is run by benchers. Benchers are some of the judges here, because that's not a separate career path. You start off practicing as a barrister, you could be promoted to become a judge, and there are some of the QCs are benchers as well. So they're the governing body of Middle Temple. I know the full name is the Honourable Society of Middle Temple. But everyone simply calls it Middle Temple most of the time, unless it's some sort of very formal setting or official document. What else? There's a hall, obviously, which is like a dining room, and it was used for performing plays. And here, the very first performance of Twelfth Night was played out there on the stage in February 16 something or other. I can't remember the year. It's thought that Shakespeare probably attended. So what is Twelfth Night about? It's Twelfth Night, or What You Will. That's the title. In the 17th century, they often gave things 2 titles. What You Will meaning whatever you want. If you don't want to call it Twelfth Night, call it anything you so please. And it's partly a send-up of Puritanism, because Shakespeare in the early 17th century was having to contend with these ultra-Protestants whose attitude was best summed up in the phrase, no singing, no dancing, thinking there's no such thing as innocent pleasure, there should be no theatre, no sport, no tobacco, not for health reasons, just because it was enjoyable. Weren't necessarily against alcohol, because beer was actually healthy, and the Thames water would often kill you because it's so foul. No gambling, bear baiting, cockfighting. Obviously no makeup, no jewellery, no bright clothing, have to wear drab colours, maybe black, white, brown, grey, things like that, and be parsimonious, and just general killjoys. And one of the characters reflects that. But anyway, so it was performed here. what else could I tell you about that? So it's had some very distinguished members. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was a member. Don't let that put you off. It's still a good place. And quite a few others. So I can show you what I mean by these. I just flashed by. I thought they might take exception to me filming the list of members here. So you see that they're in order of seniority. The senior ones right up top. You can't really read them. There'll be judges right up top. There'll be QCs right up top. Queen's Council and things like that. And the newer you are, you're right down there. So it's in an ascending order of status. That's it. So anything else you should know about Middle Temple? Ooh, I don't think so really. So it's got a few thousand barristers, but some people are non-practicing barristers. So getting a tenancy means getting a permanent place in chambers. That's the real challenge. So when they go to court, they usually appear robed, like this lady here. Okay, a black and white suit with that strange thing around her neck. I don't know what you even call it. Wearing their white horsehair wig. In the Republic of Ireland, we've abolished them. Well, they're now optional, I think, but I think hardly anybody does because they cost hundreds of quid. So a lot of people, including myself, my métier manqué is that. I fancy doing it myself, but it's the unwisest investment you could possibly make in terms of time and money because what's your chance of actually getting to practice? About 20%. It's not the case that they all make killing, because I know that some barristers make £3 million a year, but that's a tiny minority. Well, even if you're making £300,000 a year, you're doing very, very well. There's some bad ones who make about £30,000 a year at the beginning. I mean, I've heard some barristers say they reckon some people make a loss. But anyway, you know, passing the bar professional training course is not that difficult if you're good at the humanities. The real bottleneck, so I'm told, is getting a pupillage as being an assistant to someone who's already an established barrister. So that's heavily oversubscribed. We're limited to, I think, 12 applications per year. Now, these things are very carefully selected. So they'll match you up with an area of law that you find intriguing, and ideally your personality will fit that of your pupil master. Even if it's a woman, the person's called a master, not a mistress. Assigning a certificate of competence, doing 2 6s, a 6 being a period of 6 months. And then hopefully, yes, that's it, you've passed your pupillage. The next headache is getting a tenancy as in a permanent place in the chambers, which and then you're sorted out for life, unless you choose to leave. But loads of people, I mean, several of my friends being called to the bar, spend all that money, passed all those exams, been through all that stress, and never get a brief, never get to practice for a single day. So imagine how gutting that would be. And so no, it is not a guarantee of riches. Anyway, that's probably enough from Middle Temple, so I shall switch it off now.